She told them it was just a game, a fantasy role play. But when the game ended, her father was dead. This is the story of Clara Schwartz, a college student who turned fiction into murder and convinced her friends to kill for her. You're watching Unread Files. Clara Schwartz was 20 years old, a student at James Madison University in Virginia. To outsiders, she seemed like your average college kid. A little eccentric, sure, but nothing too alarming. What most people didn't know was that Clara was obsessed with fantasy role-playing. Not just games like Dungeons and Dragons, she created her own game, one where she was the victim and her father was the villain. Her dad, Robert Schwartz, was a respected DNA scientist, a quiet, intellectual man. He lived in a rural farmhouse in Virginia where he worked and raised his kids. Clara, the youngest of three, had grown distant from him, and at some point, that distance turned to hatred. The game. Clara started telling her college friends a chilling story, that her father was abusive, that he hurt her. She claimed he was poisoning her food, slowly killing her. None of this was ever verified, but Clara made it sound real. And then she took it further. She built a fantasy game called Underworld. In it, she cast herself as a sorceress who needed to be rescued. Her friends, they were the guardians. And the final boss? Her father, the evil overlord. Through storytelling, scripts, and constant reinforcement, Clara blurred the line between game and reality. She convinced her friend, 21-year-old Kyle Hulbert, that the only way to save her was to kill. The murder. On December 8, 2001, Kyle, with two others, Michael Foale and Catherine Inglis, drove to Robert Schwartz's remote farmhouse. Robert had no idea his daughter's friends were coming. He welcomed them in, even offered them ice cream. Then Kyle attacked him with a sword, struck him multiple times. It was a brutal, calculated act, driven not by rage, but by belief. Kyle thought he was on a mission to save Clara. Robert Schwartz died alone in his home. His body wasn't discovered until 2 days later, when co-workers grew suspicious and called the police. Investigation. At first, the motive was unclear. Why would three young adults target a mild-mannered scientist? Police found no sign of robbery, no history of conflict. But then, they found Clara's fantasy game, and her journal, and a notebook filled with dark thoughts, violent sketches, and detailed writings about Underworld. When detectives interviewed Clara, they noticed something strange. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't mourning. She was composed and distant. Eventually, one of her friends cracked and told the truth. Clara had manipulated them. She never lifted the sword herself, but she orchestrated everything. Trial and verdict. In 2002, Clara Schwartz was charged with first-degree murder. The prosecution argued that she masterminded the plot, using fantasy to twist reality. Her defense claimed she was misunderstood and never explicitly told Kyle to kill her father. But the evidence told a different story. Text messages, journals, testimony. Even Kyle, the killer, said he believed Clara wanted her father dead. The jury deliberated for 6 hours and found Clara guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy. She was sentenced to 48 years in prison. Kyle Hulbert received life. The other two, who drove the car and helped coordinate the plan, got shorter sentences. Aftermath. The media dubbed it the ice cream killer case because of the strange detail that Robert Schwartz had offered dessert to his killers. But the real story is far darker than that. Clara never expressed clear remorse. In letters and interviews, she continued to insist her father was abusive, despite no supporting evidence. Some believe she was mentally ill. Others say she was simply manipulative. As for Kyle Holbert, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and had a long history of psychiatric treatment. Many argue that Clara exploited his vulnerability, weaponizing his condition as part of her plan. This case raises disturbing questions about influence, fantasy, and responsibility. Can words alone kill? Or does belief, once it crosses a certain line, become a weapon in itself? What do you think? Was Clara a villain, or did she believe her own fantasy? Comment your thoughts. And for more stories like this, real, disturbing, and almost unbelievable, subscribe to Unread Files. We bring you the cases they don't want you to remember.